Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, today we have some important ground to cover. So, without further ado, I am going to plunge right in, but to those of you who like frivolity, I am mixing importance in with frivolity. Okay? So, I'm putting baking powder in the cake mix. So here we go. AP2 says, Dear Lady C, it has just been announced that the judge has thrown out the main part of Harry's case against the Sun and the News of the World. What is the significance of this? Is Harry done for? Is this the beginning of the end for him and his many cases? No, it's not, sadly. Is he done for? My dear, he's been done for several years. You know, the corpse is allowed to be standing, but there's an increasing stink emanating from its quarter. Let's put it that way. Yes, Aurora. I don't know why Aurora is so eager to be so loving today. So I'll just tuck her under my arm and continue. Harry has several lawsuits. If I remember correctly, it's 6. This is but one of them. It is a substantial and substantive loss for Harry, and more important, for his puppet master, David Sherborne, and the other string puller, Hugh Grant, and that whole lot, including Elton John, whom I have to say I do commend for having stood up for his friend Kevin Spacey. So let's give credit where it is due. They have been attempting to introduce a privacy law by virtue of legal precedent, doing it through lawsuits, because Parliament has declined to oblige them by introducing a privacy law. So they're trying it through the back door, so to speak. So far, it hasn't worked. Now, those of you who listen to me regularly might recall that I said if Mr. Justice Fancourt applied the law, Harry would lose substantively, but on minor points he would be allowed a victory. And that is precisely what has happened. I'm going to read out something. Mr. Justice Fancourt found Harry's claims in relation to the alleged secret agreement, that is, the agreement between News Group newspapers and, or was it, News Group newspapers. And because I don't want to get the cases confused, because there's also the Mirror case. But he found that Harry's alleged secret agreement between the royal family and the royal household with News Group newspapers never existed. He said that the alleged secret agreement was not plausible or credible. He said it is quite clear there was never any such agreement, and it is only the Duke who has ever asserted that there was. What he's really said is, Harry's a liar who tried it on for size, thought he was going to dupe me, and has failed to do so. When a judge says somebody is not credible, he's saying he's a liar. when he says something is not plausible, he's saying, excuse me, do you think I'm a fool? You surely don't expect me to believe that rubbish. The main part of the claim he dismissed on the grounds that not only was it brought too late, but Harry's attempts to wing it and insert false claims contradicted his own case. He said that Harry's lack of credibility included the improbability of a secret agreement being made in the terms claimed, and that the inconsistency in the Duke's case and the absence of any other witness or documentary evidence to support it substantially, I'm not quoting anymore. This just undermined Harry's claim, as I said at the time that it ought to. And I'm delighted to see that Mr. Justice Fancourt has applied the law fairly and squarely. According to the newspaper, and I quote now, this substantially reduces the scope of his legal claim. The exact nature and scope of any trial of the remainder will be the subject of further hearings. I'll tell you what that means. The newspaper is going to keep on trying to get various things knocked out, and some will be included, and a few things will ultimately go to trial, but the substance is already out of the case. In May, Mr. Justice Fancourt ruled that Hugh Grant's claim about unlawful information gathering could go ahead in January, which is what he has agreed with Harry's case. He also stated that allegations of phone hacking could not be included. Now, this brings up, to those of you who are not familiar with the law and what is at stake here. This is Mr. Justice Fancourt is absolutely correct to have the aspect of possible illegal news gathering by a news organization heard and tried. If there's an arguable case, it needs to proceed to trial. However, I'm trying to make the situation clear to you. Mr. Justice Fancourt is saying that accusations of illegal news gathering by third parties instructed by the newspapers, that is I'm trying to find a decisive way of putting it. By private investigators and third-hand newspaper information gathering should be tried in an open court to see whether the newspapers have legally or illegally news gathered. Now, this is a very important point, and Harry and Meghan and Hugh Grant and Elton John and their puppet master David Sherborne are going to find it very difficult to prevail, and I'll tell you why. There is nothing illegal about a newspaper instructing a private detective to embark upon investigations. And as long as the newspaper has not instructed the private detective to gather his information illegally, and as long as the newspaper has no reasonable cause to suppose that information being gathered has been gathered illegally, that means it is perfectly lawful. The attempts by this cabal of censors to create the scenario which Harry argued in court. You know, he was saying that, I can't understand how, when I was in a nightclub, the press found out about it. Dumbo Harry. It didn't have to be a private detective. It didn't have to be phone hacking. It could have been a member of staff tipping off the press. And if the press decide that they want private detectives to investigate a matter, that is within their legal right. Unless a crime is committed, there is nothing unlawful about it. This is what is going to be going to trial. In the news group matter, I'm going to quote, he already knew that in relation to the news of the world, and he could easily have found out by making basic inquiries that he was likely to have a similar claim in relation to articles published by The Sun. Mr. Justice Fancourt said there was no evidence currently before him that the Duke knew at least 6 years before the date he issued his claim that, quotes, news group newspapers had done anything other than hack his mobile phone at the news of the world. Knowing and being on notice of a worthwhile claim for voicemail interception does not of itself amount to knowledge or notice of a worthwhile claim for other forms of unlawful information gathering. Let's wait and see what happens. It is already being feared that Harry is going to use any coming trial to launder dirty linen in public. I think he's going to go into, oh, I'm such a victim, I'm such a victim, I'm such a victim. But he's not going to have much scope for laundering dirty linen about his family, except to maybe make the claims he's been already making, which they threw me to the wolves. They threw me to the wolves. They threw Meg to the wolves. I'm just the spare they needed to protect William and Daddy and that cow Camilla. They, my sugar. User KP19GT9YX6N says, they. Dear Lady C, Harry and Meghan having Dan Wooten ruined, I believe it cannot be a coincidence that their loudest critic suddenly needs to face such allegations. I am afraid you will be next. Take care. Love, Gabriella. Gabriella, Dan Wooten isn't ruined yet. He is certainly being buffeted on all sides. And of course, let's not forget there are pots of gold at the end of those rainbows. But he's not ruined yet. Insofar as I am aware, he has done nothing illegal and nothing unethical. He has simply, up to what I know so far, behaved the way modern gay men of a certain age who are between, shall we say, relationships behave. And all this nonsense about the fact that he might have concealed his identity behind a nom de plume, or maybe even a nom de guerre. Well, why wouldn't he? He's a well-known figure. Do you think well-known figures go on the internet using their own names? I mean, give me a break. As I say, I am not aware of anything that Dan Wooten has done that is at all illegal. And rarely are we surprised that young men at the peak of their physical needs and desires are trying to connect with fellow thinkers, let's put it that way. I'm not surprised. And quite frankly, this obsession with people's personal lives is, I think, supremely distasteful. Having said that, yes, Dan has been quite a critic of Harry and Meghan. Are they after him? Is the Pope a Catholic? Is the chief rabbi Jewish? Are Harry and Meghan jerks? Are they interested in shutting down everybody who criticizes them? You know the answer to that as well as I do. But am I worried that I'm going to be next? Let them try it on for size. They will discover what Alison Rose discovered when she tried to destroy Nigel Farage's reputation, lying to the BBC about why she embarked upon a breach of her fiduciary duties and the law to not only shut down his bank account against the law, both EU law and English law, but also to do it in the most disgraceful manner. And she was found out. I have nothing to hide. There is nothing that anybody can stick on me that I would fear. Let them try it. And they will discover what Alison Rose has discovered. I hope that answers the question unmistakably. Caroline R. Jackson says, Lady C, I believe Harry is due to record a show in Africa for Netflix. Will Maggot stay in Montecito while he is away in Africa? If so, do you think that him having some space from her will enable him to reevaluate what his life has become? Will he be able to do some much needed soul searching without her? Or has the succubus completely sucked him dry already? Well, Caroline R. Jackson, I have a very mixed reports on Harry's present state of mind and Meghan's effect presently as opposed to in the past upon him, and the level of control that Meghan exerts. I have very mixed reports. And I am not believing a word emanating from their quarter. I will, however, make a point. How credible is it that Netflix is going to take Harry to Africa to record a show when the Invictus Games show has been postponed? Get my drift? Is this another rumour emanating from California? Oh, you know, to go along with Harry and Meghan are going to be presenting the Oscars. They're going to be presenting the winning picture with its Oscar. In fact, they're going to have a specially crafted Oscar created for them in 22 karat gold. And Kerry Kennedy is going to be there to give it to them for all those wonderful tilts at the racist royalist windmill that they have so quixotically embarked upon. I know people are seriously worried about Harry. I know that people who were close to him are seriously worried about Harry. And I know that they're seriously worried about the fact that this situation cannot continue at the rate and pace that it has been going without something giving. But will Harry, if he is in Africa, dedicate some much devoted time to contemplating his navel? Or will he be on the blower constantly to Meghan? Or will he be contemplating the disastrous consequences of her influence upon his life? I'll tell you, when people are involved in very sick relationships, they often come pretty close to leaving and then don't leave. Some of these relationships last for a lifetime because one party, it is in their worldly interest, and the other is too weak and or dumb and or self-deluding and or pathetic, and I can go on with the and ors, but I will stop. So Wendy Evans says, Lady C, allegedly Harry and Meghan are hunting down the people in Hollywood who denied their documentary a nod at the Emmys. They are behaving as if they have power and can actually do harm to these people. What is your view on their vision of their own power? First of all, my dear, nobody in Hollywood takes them seriously. I have friends in Hollywood. Harry and Meghan are not only a joke, they are pathetics. They are snared at, frowned upon, and looked down upon. They are looked down upon like the piece of gum that Trevor Engelson said Meghan treated him as at the end of their relationship. I do not think that this sort of story can be of interest to or have emanated from anybody except the Sussex supporters, whether it is the Sussex squad, the Sussex employees, or the companies who are trying to turn base metal into gold and finding that it's rusting before their very eyes, such as William Morris Endeavour. Nobody cares. Harry and Meghan have no power in Hollywood, never did. All the powers that be in Hollywood, as soon as they hear their names, they cackle with disdain. When they first arrived in America, there was high hopes that mileage could be gained from them because of their royal status. They've ruined that. They've showed that not only do the emperor and empress have no clothes on, and therefore their new clothes are as transparent as glass, but that they both have bodies that are not only not worth seeing, but repel most people. So, are they going to win Mr. and Miss Universe, or Duke and Duchess of Universe? I don't think so. P. Preston says, Lady C, Countess Alexandra Tolstoy is reported to be taking on NatWest and demanding why they shut down her account. You seem to know sorry, everyone. Do you know the Countess? What's she like? Do you think she's in the right? I've met Alexandra Tolstoy. I wouldn't have said I know her. I've met her. We've sat beside each other at, well, one removed with a man between at balls. I certainly know her uncle Andrew and have known him for many years. I was one of the founding committee members of the War and Peace Ball, which Andrew founded. This would have been in the 80s. I'm still a member of the organizing committee of it in its present configuration, the Imperial Ball. I've known Andrew's ex-wife, Carolinda, for many, many years. We also have a link through other mutual friends. So I'm very fond of Carolinda, I've got to tell you. I know Alexandra's aunt, Tanya Illingworth, who actually helped me with the process of adopting my children. That's right. So, let's see. I know her father, not terribly well, but I've met him repeatedly. I've met her mother. As I say, I've met her. She's very good looking. She is very nice. She is very tragic because she has been put through the ringer, and she's absolutely right to demand answers of NatWest because they closed down her bank account without any explanation and then refused to allow her any feedback whatsoever, except she was never given a reason, but she believes, as a result of research, that it's because her former partner, Sergei Pugachev, who's the father of, I think, her 3 children, was known as Putin's banker. But she and Sergei Pugachev do not speak. In fact, he has behaved shockingly, if what Alexandra says is true, in terms of his treatment of her and their 3 children. I'm going to quote something she says. "Come on, I'm a single parent. This is a really human, horrible case. I've got 3 children. I can't support them. What do I do?" And NatWest's answer to her inquiry was, according to her, the extremely arrogant, condescending, I will say as well, response of, "We see no reason to meet you or speak to you or give you the rationale behind our reasoning." She said this privately, and she said this on the BBC. Yes, she should go after them. She is a totally apolitical woman. So what if she had an affair with Putin's banker? Is this the Soviet Union? Is this the ancient Roman Republic, where if somebody fell foul of the rulers, not only was that person annihilated, but so was the whole family? I mean, these are hugely important issues that we need to be addressed. Human rights exist for a reason, to protect the rights of human beings. I do not recall that one of the requirements of being a human being is that you are supposed to be perfect. I seem to recall, in fact, that Jesus said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." How dare the bank do this to that poor woman? And she is very nice. As I said, she's very pretty, and she's as bright as a button. It's a disgrace what they've done to her. And my feeling is that all these victims of politicized banking institutions should be restored their accounts and compensated for the damage that the banks have done, not only to their life, but to their security, because a bank account nowadays is not a luxury, it's a human right. J.I. Eaton says, "The good citizens of the UK need to revolt and tell the politicians they do not want their banks to be dictators." J.I. Eaton, the good citizens of the UK don't need to revolt. Those of us who have the ability to comment have already made our positions clear, and the government has already responded in kind and positively. Of course, the Guardian newspaper, that champion of certain people's and segments of society's rights, are so dumb that they don't realize that by championing the cause of Alison Rose and the right of the bank to shut down people without just cause, they are showing that they are not champions of everyone's liberty, just the liberties of those who agree with them. But to be specific, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, both stated that something needed to be done, and they did it as soon as it became apparent that Alison Rose, despite having breached clan confidentiality and broken both British and European law, was being protected by the board of NatWest, as was their duty as Chancellor and Prime Minister. I understand that what happened was that Jeremy Hunt was working at number 11 when he was informed that there had been a board meeting at NatWest. And notwithstanding the total illegality of Alison Rose's actions and her admission that she had made a serious error of judgment, that she still enjoyed the directors of NatWest's full confidence. This is what they declared. I gather that Jeremy Hunt's jaw literally did. Who heads up the board of NatWest? Sir Howard John Davies, who is an arch Remainer. He was the first chairman of the Financial Services Authority. I'm going to read something. He was the chairman of the Phoenix Group until July 2015, chaired the UK Airports Commission. In February 2015, he was appointed chairman of the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, taking up the role from September 2015. And in 2020, the Royal Bank of Scotland Group was renamed the NatWest Group. Well, he is currently under immense and rightful scrutiny because he had absolutely no right to not only give Alison Rose and spearhead the campaign to give her a clean bill of health after she had leaked lies, not even leaked the truth, leaked lies about a client. But they didn't even consult the government, notwithstanding the fact that the government is the largest shareholder of NatWest. Well, really, the people of Great Britain are the largest shareholder of NatWest, 38%. Do you begin to see the enormity of what happened? And at that point, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, and the City Minister waded in. And I'm going to quote what Andrew Griffiths said. "This would never have happened if NatWest had not taken it upon itself to withdraw a bank account due to someone's lawful political views. That was and is always unacceptable. I hope the whole financial sector learns from this incident. Its role is to serve customers well and fairly, not to tell them how or what to think." Now, this is a rarely. Keir Starmer, who is the leader of the Labour Party, not only expressed sympathy for Farage, but said that NatWest had, and I quote, "got this one wrong," and it was the correct thing for Alison Rose to go. Notwithstanding that, because you see, Keir Starmer is a lawyer, and he understands that when you're in a position of authority, you're not allowed to flagrantly break the law. But his shadow chancellor, Rachel Reeves, doesn't understand that. And she had the unmitigated gall to condemn the bullying attitudes towards Rose. She said in an interview on Channel 4, which was broadcast last night, and this was recorded before Alison Rose stepped down, she defended Alison Rose's right to break the law, wait for it, and she attacked the Treasury ministers, accusing the government of picking a fight with banks on behalf of Nigel Farage. I'll quote her. "I don't like some of what I see as bullying attitudes towards her. She's the first female chief executive of NatWest. She took over at a time when that bank had real big problems. It seems to me that Alison Rose has done a good job turning that bank around." Well, I'm awfully sorry. The fact that she was successful in turning the bank around with our taxpayers' money, and any other incompetent could have done it, incidentally. I certainly could have done it, given 1/5 of the salary. And I think any intelligent person would have been able to do it either. So let's not deify the woman, although we'll give credit where it's due. She did a competent job. But how dare this Reeve woman accuse the government of damaging UK PLC and failing to show due process amid concerns over anonymous briefings that triggered the early morning resignation of Alison Rose. Wait for it. There is a real sense of disquiet that political pressure has led to a midnight exit for such an important banking CEO. One of the stooges at the Financial Conduct Authority told The Guardian they should have allowed due process. No, they shouldn't. The woman was guilty of sin. It was known that she was guilty. The government had an absolute duty to call her out and demand her resignation, and the bank had no right to defend the right of its CEO to break the law, breach clan confidentiality, and make false accusations against one of its customers because she doesn't like his political views. This whole situation has been so incredibly abusive. I cannot tell you. It has been a total abuse of the public's right to be protected against political interference by executives. And I want to end on this question with how Keir Starmer responded, because on BBC Radio 5 Live, when he was asked if he felt sorry for Nigel Farage, he said, yeah, he shouldn't have had his personal details revealed like that. It doesn't matter who you are. That's a general rule. I certainly don't think anybody should be refused banking services because of their political views, whoever they are. The Treasury spokesman said, this was a decision made by the NatWest board and Alison Rose. The NatWest board is responsible for the bank's strategic and operational management. The government has been clear throughout that as a matter of public policy, it is wrong to remove someone's bank account because of their political views or something that they said. free speech within the law and the legitimate expression of differing views is an important British liberty. Well, I honestly do not see in how it is possible that anybody in their right mind, or even people in their wrong mind who have a brain, could criticize anything the government has done in this instance, because my only hope is that the government would behave as effectively and efficiently in other matters as they have behaved in this one. And now I'm going to quote what Peter Pan says. Emily Maitlis has been accused of victim blaming after claiming to her BBC guest on her podcast, The News Agents, that Nigel Farage stoked up a culture war, quote unquote, following the Coutts banking scandal. I'd be interested in hearing your perspective on this. Delighted. Emily Maitlis has done something, yet again, which I deplore. I have met Emily Maitlis for the blink of an eyelid, and I formed no opinion of her. But I'm telling you, I'm forming an ever-increasingly low one the more I discover about her policies, her performance, the way she goes about performing her role, and her beliefs. She is a condescending cow who is so woke that she would make sleeping tablets look colourful. She told her podcast, before I say that, let me say, she accused Nigel Farage of turning utter entitlement into victimhood on her podcast. Well, first of all, my dear Emily Maitlis, you idiot! If someone has their legal entitlement violated, they are a victim, you stupid woman. I mean, how dare she? Who does she think she is? Nigel Farage didn't turn himself into a victim, you stupid cow. NatWest and Alison Rose turned him into a victim, you condescending piece of something or the other. God, I have to tell you, I deplore people like her, but wait for it, the condescension that oozes out of that ghastly woman's mouth. She says, if you put to one side the leaking of customer confidentiality, which I probably think we all agree is egregious, the one thing we have learned from all of this is how to whip up a populist storm. At the heart of this is the choice of one private bank to say no to one private customer who they felt was costing them too much and wasn't bringing them in enough money. They offered him another high street bank like 95% of the population uses, and that wasn't good enough. Farage made it an argument about censorship and liberty and free speech when it wasn't. No one was shutting him down, no one was stopping him from banking, no one was calling his names. They simply waited until he paid off a mortgage, having decided ahead of time they would call it quits at this time. This isn't a public utility, it's not electricity, it's a posh private bank. It's in the name. Yet the power of the populist is to somehow turn utter entitlement into victimhood, and that's quite the move. Well, this woman needs an education in the difference between right and wrong. What she has said about Nigel Farage convinces me in a way that I have never been convinced before, that she deliberately set Prince Andrew up for her political ambitions and political sympathies and political ends. I said at the time that I have had experience of journalists who were ethical, who when I was making a boo-boo, they rescued me from myself. She did the absolute opposite. And you can say, well, she's a journalist. Well, you can't say in this instance she's a journalist because she's a swine. She has no concept of the difference between right and wrong, and between what is lawful and what is unlawful, and what is ethical and what is not ethical. The woman is a study in inversion. I'm going to pick to pieces what she said. If you put to one side the leaking of customer confidentiality, which I probably think we all agree is egregious, Miss Maitlis, you can't put that to one side. You can't say if he hadn't been a murderer, he would have been really nice to his victim, or he'd have been a really nice guy. But he just is an axe murderer. That's not how life works. You cannot separate the essential and be left with anything else except dross. And plainly, you are doing this. And that leads me to believe that not only are you a very resourceful thinker, but that you don't know the fact that only a certain category of person, which I would regard as debased, passes dross off as something it is not. I'm going to continue. The one thing we have learned from this is how to whip up a populist storm. Yes, Nigel Farage has given a very good lesson in how we the people can use our voice to not be abused and intimidated by law breakers and unethical people like Alison Rose. And no, you're quite wrong when you say that one private bank to say no to one private customer who wasn't bringing them in enough money. That's a lie. Nigel Farage has proven that's a lie, and you're repeating the lie. That's a lie. You should be made to apologize for that lie. Also, I can tell you, having been a client of Coutts, I wasn't bringing in any money, and they were very happy to have me as a client. So you are clearly deluded. Anyway, I'll continue. They offered him another high street bank. And what was to guarantee you, idiot, that that wasn't a poisoned chalice and he wasn't going to be axed from that as well? And why would he be axed from Coutts when Alison Rose herself and the bank have confirmed that it had nothing whatsoever to do with money? It was his political beliefs, and you are spinning this false yarn, and you are supposed to be a reputable journalist? Sounds to me as if you're more on the ill repute side than the repute side. And if you don't like it, sue me. Sue me! Your conduct is reprehensible. Your argument is disgusting. It is an absolute insult to any law-abiding, or moral person. And you say Farage made it an argument about censorship and liberty and free speech when it wasn't? Except, of course, that Alison Rose's letter to Nigel Farage has shown that it's exactly what it was about. But you've ignored that. Just as how you plainly ignored all sorts of things in other interviews. You are a disgrace to your profession. No one was shutting him down. Are you a fool? They just shut him down. No one was stopping him from banking. Excuse me, the bank had told him they were shutting him down. That's not stopping him from banking. No one was calling him names. No one was calling him names. Have you read the report? Have you read the things they said about him? He's a xenophobe and he's a racist. Excuse me, you silly woman. What planet are you on? Don't answer it. I know the name of the planet. Anyway, she goes on. It isn't a public utility. It's not electricity. It's a posh private bank. It's in the name. It was his bank for 40 years. It is the same as a public utility or electricity. It is an essential service. And somebody who has banked with an institution for 40 years deserves to continue banking with them. And personally speaking, I think Nigel Farage should dig in his heels and demand that they take him back. And yes, Emily Maitlis, Nigel Farage has shown us how it's done when you are being victimized to nail your persecutor. Pity Prince Andrew wasn't able to nail you. I mean, the idea that you're not entitled to things that the European Union and the British states say you're entitled to. Unbelievable. I mean, the woman is a disgrace to herself and to everybody else. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please remember to keep the questions and comments coming in, because I can't do this without you. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye. And if you've really enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed.